Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon for our first Public Sector AI Advisory Board meeting. Very excited that this is finally here. My name is Tony Sauerhoff. For those that don't know me, I'm the Chief AI and Innovation Officer at DIR. Before we jump in, our Executive Director, I think y'all know, Amanda Crawford, wants to say hi. Go ahead, Mandy.
Thank you, Tony. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And thank you very much for saying yes and accepting the governor's appointment to this important work. I know that we are at DIR very excited to get this launched. There's so many things that we've had in the pipeline around a variety of things AI related. And so this was one of the linchpin pieces to get moving so we can get a lot of those projects started and doing a lot of the implementation from the legislation that came about last session. So we're excited to get going on this. Big jobs, big work ahead of us. And, as I was working with the governor's office on folks who would be perfect for this board, you all were all just natural fits for that. So I'm really excited. Again, I know you all have busy schedules, but we're really excited that you all said yes and are going to partner with us on this effort. So thanks very much. And I'll turn it back over to Tony.
Thank you, Mandy. Okay, I'll play the role of facilitator to talk us through the meeting today. Next slide, please, Gloria. All right, start off with our agenda. We'll do a roll call. Tessa will help us with some introductions, especially since this is our first meeting. Jenny Holscher will talk through our board statutory charge and HB 3512 training program certification requirements. We'll all talk a little bit about some different ongoing AI initiatives here at DIR. And then we'll talk about scheduling our next meeting and what our cadence will look like, and then we'll wrap up. So before we move on, Tessa, do you want to do the roll call, please?
Sure. Thanks, Tony. I'll just quickly go through our list of board members and just let me know that you're here. Jacqueline Behrens.
Here.
David Bolduc.
Here.
Josh Chacona.
Here.
Heather Hall.
Here.
Sylvia Hernandez Kaufman.
Here.
Tina McLeod.
Here.
Ann Sullison.
Here.
And Ron Steffa.
Here.
Okay. That's everybody.
Right. Thank you, Tessa. Okay, let's jump in. Next slide, please. So first off, we'll go through some introductions with our board members that Tessa just called. And I guess if you'd like, we can run through and y'all can take a minute to say hi, introduce yourselves and who you're with. So we'll just go in order that we have here on the slide. Heather Hall.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Heather Hall. I'm the CIO at Texas Workforce Commission. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Heather. Sylvia Hernandez Kaufman.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sylvia Hernandez Kaufman. I'm the CIO at the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. And like Heather, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. Tina McLeod.
Hey, Tina McLeod, CIO of the Attorney General's Office, and thrilled to be here as well.
Thanks, Tina. Ann Sullison.
Hi, everybody. Ann Sullison, Chief Information Officer for TxDOT, and really privileged to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron Steffa.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Ron Steffa. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Pleased to be here as well.
Thanks, Rod. David Bolduc. I'm not sure if I'm saying your last name right there, David.
Yeah, that's close enough. I'm the Public Insurance Counsel.
All right. Hey, David. Thanks for being here. Jacqueline Behrens. Hey, Jacqueline.
Hi, how's it going? Jacqueline Behrens. I have been working in technology for over 20 years and with the state of Texas for over 15 years. I currently lead all the work that CGI does in and around the Austin and San Antonio area, which includes the state of Texas, as well as local government across the state.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And last but not least, Josh Chacona.
Hi, everyone. Josh Chacona. I lead the Central and Southwest Enterprise Solutions Engineering teams for Snowflake.
I've been on the Snowflake Data Clean Room, been in the data space for about 15 years myself, based out of Austin, Texas, and honored and excited to be here today.
Thank you, Josh. Okay, next slide, please. So, I guess we need to go through all of these folks. I think y'all know these folks on this slide, but these are the folks that we have on the call that will be supporting this board effort in one capacity or another. These are all DIR folks. Thank y'all that are on for being here from DIR. Next slide, please. All right, we'll jump right in and turn it over to Jenny to go over the legislative charge of the board.
All right, thank you, Tony. Tony asked me to just kind of begin today by really looking at what the legislature wants this board to do. So Senate Bill 1964 was the bill that created the board, and along with creating it, it articulated 5 kind of general tasks that the board needed to accomplish. So those can be found at Government Code Section 2054.705. I thought we'd just look through those here at the beginning. So the first task is to obtain and disseminate information on AI systems, including use cases, policies, and guidelines. The second task is to facilitate shared resources between state agencies. The third is to consult with DIR on AI issues, and we have some opportunities to do that today, in fact. Then the fourth is to identify opportunities for state agencies to implement AI systems to reduce administrative burdens and to streamline the state procurement process for AI systems. And then finally, fifth, to recommend elimination of any rules that restrict the innovation of AI systems. So those are certainly some meaty tasks, and there will be, I think, a lot of opportunities through your work and in conjunction with DIR to tackle some of these. But our first order of business today, apart from looking at this, is really to talk about one of the areas where we need your consultation before we can move forward. So Gloria, if you want to move on to the next slide, we will talk about House Bill 3512. And for those of you that aren't in government work, Jacqueline and Josh in particular, you may not be as familiar with our annual cybersecurity training that applies to almost all state and local governments across the state. But there is an annual cybersecurity training requirement that applies. And now, because of House Bill 3512, there is also an annual AI training certification requirement for most state and local government employees. So Gloria, if you'll move on to the next slide. That House Bill 3512 established this program, and government employees who use a computer at least 25% of the time to perform their duties must take this annual training. And by statute, it has to be similar in length to the required cybersecurity training. So DIR, according to the statute, in consultation with the board, has to establish standards for this training program and certify at least 5 training programs that satisfy the training requirements that we have established. So just for reference, DIR has long kind of organized and administered the state cybersecurity program. And every year we publish training requirements, and we receive submissions from vendors and from agencies, from local governments that have created these training programs. And we certify them and then publish that list, and agencies and local governments can choose from that list what training program they want to use to educate their employees on cybersecurity. So this program is set up very similarly to that, but instead of cyber, it's an AI training program. So what we need your help with is establishing this list of requirements that the training must comply with in order to be certified and comply with the law. So Gloria, if you will move on to the next slide, we'll kind of talk about what those training requirements look like. So in, I think, 2 of the emails that Tessa has sent to you all, we sent you a proposed draft of those standards for certification that we are recommending. And there are really 3 areas that we think this training should focus on at this time. The first of those is just a general explanation. What is AI, and how can public sector employees use it to make improvements, to make, efficiencies in their overall work product? And certainly we want that training to emphasize, while there's a wealth of different AI programs out there that employees could use, it's very important that employees use only what has been approved by their agency. So that'll be an important part of the program, but also really just focusing on what are the good use cases? How can employees use AI to improve their work, save time, and better serve Texans? And so that'll be a big bulk of the program. Then the second content area is about risks and limitations of AI. So a recognition that there is some risk involved in using AI. It's not always accurate. It doesn't have the same level of judgment that a human does. And there are certain risks that employees need to be aware of when they use AI and take actions to protect against those risks. And then the final area is really just best practices in responsibly and ethically using AI. There is a draft AI code of ethics that we'll talk about in a minute. The legislature has articulated principles of ethical and responsible AI usage. And so a focus on those: human oversight, protecting privacy, promoting security, being transparent about usage, making sure that your AI outputs are accurate, and just being accountable for AI usage. So those are really the main topics that any AI training program that's certified needs to comply with. And those are taken largely from statute. The legislature indicated that this training program really does need to focus on teaching employees how they can use AI in relation to their duties, and focusing on AI literacy and responsible deployment of those tools. So at this time, we'd really love you all to, if you have any questions about this program or any recommendations or feedback on the draft standards that we have shared with you, we would love to hear that. Yes, David, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, a question that you may have already got to. In the risks and limitations, is it worth telling people that not only does its value depend on the quality of the training data, but on the instructions given it?
Oh, you mean like the prompts?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be certainly something that we could, and I think that kind of goes back to, in order to use these tools successfully, you need some proper education on them. And we can certainly talk about that in those kind of using prompts and prompt education. Let's see. I saw your hand, and then Sylvia, we'll go to you next.
I really like these 3 courses. They align with some of the stuff that we've already started doing here from an AI literacy perspective. And so, I don't know if y'all have built out these already for the training, but I'd love to share the content just to see maybe there's opportunities when we can leverage some of your content to kind of engage people accepting the information, because it's one thing for us to provide that information, it's another for people to actually absorb it. But I also like the general explanation on AI in public sector, because if you're in IT, you understand quite a bit of what AI, because it's coming at you just from a development and implementation perspective. But one of the things that our ED has asked is there opportunity to provide AI literacy for non-technical folks, which I think that's what you're trying to target in your first one. So I'd like to see more of what you guys may have developed already in that space, so that maybe it could be shareable to us, for example.
Yes. And I'll tell you, we are working on, so we were waiting to finalize something, make sure that these certification requirements were consistent with, the recommendations that you all had. But we do have a 3512 course in progress. And the goal is to, like we have always done through a CISO with the cyber program, to have a course available that employees can use, that agencies and local governments can use, that is not of an additional cost to them. So we certainly will be working fast and furious on that once these are finalized. And then I would also say, though, like with cyber, there is an opportunity for other agencies, for local governments to share their training programs as well and get those certified. And so, if there are other entities that have done that, we would certainly welcome those. And if they're willing to share those, with other agencies apart from their own, then certainly that will be an opportunity as well. Yeah, Sylvia, you had a question.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify. So then if our people are using yours, then we don't have to create anything if we find that yours meet our whatever criteria it is that we have.
Yeah, so there will be a DIR program, a training program that meets these requirements. I know that there have already been vendors reaching out to us saying that they would like to provide programs as well. So those will go through the certification process. And so we will publish a list on the DIR website, just like we do with cyber, of acceptable training programs for this program. And that is, like with cyber, that'll be a yearly process that we'll go through. And I expect that these requirements will evolve as AI evolves, for sure.
Great, thank you.
Add something there, Jenny, real quick, please.
Sure,
So one thing with ours, like with our cyber training, Sylvia, we've got something out there that meets the requirements, and we have an English and a Spanish version even. But there's not a tracking mechanism, right? It's not something you can pull into an LMS, and it's a YouTube video, and it meets the requirements, and for sure, but it definitely requires more tracking on your side, more work on your side to keep track. And Sylvia, in your case, that that may be quite a bit of work. So just something to keep in mind, that we will have something out there that meets the requirement. We do, we will, as Jenny said, we will have something that satisfies the requirement. We also, on average, certify about 125 cyber trainings per year. Some are locally developed by agencies or local governments, many by vendors. So that's about the number we certify every year for the cyber training. Don't really have a sense yet, how many that will be on the AI side, and probably that will grow, for a few years. Start out smaller, but I would expect there to be quite a few options out there that satisfy the requirement.
Thank you.
Yeah. Heather, I think you were next.
All right. Well, I'm really curious on the transparency and accountability items in that last course. And so I'll be curious once we get there, because we've had some pretty healthy discussions at TWC about the extent to which we have to tell people that we're using AI. So it even went to, I consider, to the extreme in one conversation that, like, every time you're using AI, you should have a log saying that you used AI to help do this, that, and the other. And we don't do that with other tools like Excel. If I open up Excel and use it to add 5 numbers together, I don't log that I used a tool to do something. So we struggled a little bit when we updated our ethics policy about kind of that balance of when do we need to tell somebody that we've used AI versus when is it just a tool that helps us do our job that's not something. So I'm really going to be curious around that kind of ethical use, and particularly around transparency and accountability. So just wanted to throw that out there for thought.
Thank you. That's helpful. Let's see. Tina?
First, I'm going to echo what Heather said, because understanding the boundaries of sort of that disclaimer or consent to use AI is something that's interesting, since AI is being woven in just about everything that we use these days. I think also with the training, it's going to be helpful to give realistic examples in everyday government or public sector use of when an AI system would be appropriate to use, like things like chatbots or text summarization or classification, things like that. Basically, when is it appropriate to use a probabilistic system? And then when is it important to use a deterministic system, like a classic, where the same input is going to generate the exact same output. And I think of things like our eligibility rules engines, especially in the human services space. I think of benefit calculations, different validation checks and payment distributions, things like that, where a probabilistic system wouldn't be appropriate without that human in the loop. And when you want something that's very deterministic versus something where you can use something that is more predictive in nature.
Yeah, that's good feedback, Tina. I do think like examples are really the way to provide a helpful training here. Particularly, I think there are a lot of employees that are not comfortable with using AI still. And so, getting them comfortable and giving them some parameters around use. I do think, kind of getting back to that transparency question a little bit, the legislature has given us some minimal guidelines on providing notice, particularly if it's public facing AI. I do think a lot of those sorts of questions are going to be left up to the agencies to make decisions about in terms of, what is your comfort level with risk and with transparency requirements? And, there'll be some guidance, that the legislature has given, but there's also a lot of room there for interpretation. So, I think the training, if you review the training standards, you've seen there's a discussion about transparency. The specific parameters of that transparency are really established within those training standards, in part because I think this is new, and the goal is to provide, some flexibility along with the guardrails that we have, and kind of see where this goes. Let's see, Ron, you had a question?
Well, I'll just have really more of a comment. To the degree that it's available, I think having an assessment of the comprehension of the topics is very valuable for the state employees. And then you'd mentioned the video. If there is a ability to have a proof of completion, that would be beneficial as well.
We'll definitely make a note of that, Ron, and see if that's something we can put together. Jacqueline?
Yes, my comment is very much in line with what both Tina and Heather had said. When I was reviewing the content requirements that you sent out in advance, one of the first things that came to mind was if we, for Talk Now or maybe in a future iteration, what it would look like if we need to differentiate the training requirements based on risk of the use case. So something like, writing an email for you is very different than I think some of the examples that Tina was referencing around if it's going to make, help influence decisions around eligibility or benefits or something that has much more of an impact. And what are the implications then for training related to that?
Well, that's a great point, Jacqueline. And I think even in a minimal, training like this, there is room to recognize, risks, and the mitigation measures that you are implementing will vary, based on those risks. And there, certain AI doesn't create much heartburn, and other AI creates a lot more heartburn. So, recognizing, and it's hard for, we deal with this all the time for the average employee who still may be kind of risk averse when it comes to AI. Understanding that it is complicated, but I think a recognition of it at a minimum is something we could do. Yeah. Josh.
Yeah, just curious if there's, what your thoughts are on expanding the AI guidelines for the data that's being either run against it or generated, and how it's being distributed. And from an auditing perspective, not everyone knows exactly how to navigate PII or semi-PII data. So curious, maybe what the details are in that realm, and how much data quality is going to be discussed in this training.
That's a great question. There is, I know that on the full list of standards, there is a discussion about PII and an emphasis, that, if you're using publicly available tools, not really an enterprise model, but something that's publicly available, that, employees need to know you don't put any personal information or sensitive information into those tools. So that's definitely an emphasis that I think hopefully most government employees can understand, right? I think definitely in terms of the sort of more in-depth discussions on data quality and how the models are trained, these standards don't really get into that, but our data literacy program that DIR is working on I think is looking into those sorts of issues, and that may be more geared towards, you know, policymakers, technologists, you know, the people that are really going to be making the decisions on the AI that's used and what data is used in it. But that's definitely, you know, a valid point for sure. Because that really, you know, makes or breaks the AI a lot of the time.
Yep.
So, yeah. Yeah, these are great comments. Does anybody else have any feedback?
You know, it may be, Jenny, where we get, you know, with the comparing again to the cyber awareness training, that's a kind of a base foundational training that's required for every user. But then there are other IT trainings and cyber trainings for cyber professionals and other things, other training requirements over and above that, depending on the person's job. And it might be that as we go in AI, that there becomes other training requirements over and above for folks that work with, you know, heightened scrutiny systems, right? Or certain types of data, right? And in a similar way, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right. Well, our goal here, I know there are a lot of it. If you work for an agency, you're probably wanting this program to start rolling. And I know we've gotten lots of questions about, you know, when is this training going to be available? So our goal was to have this conversation with you all and to be able by the end of this year to kind of finalize these requirements and get them out to vendors and to agencies so that, you know, at the beginning of the new year, agencies and vendors could kind of hit the ground running, developing some of these training programs so that agencies could satisfy this training requirement, you know, as soon as possible. I know a lot are concerned about it. So that's our plan. So really appreciate you all providing this feedback. And again, this is something that we will review every year. We will make modifications to. And our goal this year was to provide some flexibility, but also hit on the, you know, important issues that we know our public sector employees need to be aware of. So we'll be looking for a final version of this soon and more information about how the submission process will occur. So thank you guys for your feedback on that. And Tony, I'll turn it back to you.
And I think you're still up, Jenny.
Okay, that's right.
Next slide. I thought we had code of ethics next, but go ahead. Next slide,
That's
please.
right.
Yeah.
We do.
Ongoing AI initiatives. One more. Here we
Yes.
go.
Okay. Got it.
Got you, Jenny. Go ahead.
So we have a lot of AI initiatives happening at DIR. I just happen to be the first one we get to talk about. So one of the other many requirements that Senate Bill 1964 required of DIR was to establish by rule an AI code of ethics and minimum risk management and governance standards for government use of heightened scrutiny AI. So, and that term is defined in statute, and it's, I think, a fairly narrow subpart of AI as a whole. So DIR has drafted proposed rules. We shared those rules with the ITCHE, which we fondly refer to the IT Council for Higher Education. And they provided us with a number of comments before we ever published those rules. And we revised those and then presented them to our board and received approval to publish those. We published those for public comment in the Texas Register on November 7th. And we received some comments that we are in the process of reviewing right now. And we will review those, consider what changes, if any, we need to make. And then if there aren't any significantly substantive changes that aren't already within the scope of the proposed rule, then we will present another draft to our board at its next board meeting for adoption. We are still in the early stages of reviewing those comments, though, so more to come on that in the following year. But if you'd like to review those rules, I've got a link here on the slide where you can find those in the Texas Register. And there's really two components to those rules. They're in Chapter 219 of the Texas Administrative Code. And the first subchapter is the AI Code of Ethics. And the legislature really directed us to focus on some very specific AI ethical principles in drafting this Code of Ethics. So human oversight, fairness, accuracy, the ability for constituents to redress any issues that they have with AI, transparency, data privacy, accountability, and then an evaluation and documentation process for AI. So that AI code of ethics really focuses on all of those, gives some guidance for agencies as they implement AI on how to comply with those ethical principles. And then the second subchapter B, really focuses on these minimum standards specific to heightened scrutiny AI. And so that talks about risk assessments that are required, impact assessments, and identifying those uses of AI that do create more risk and require heightened level of evaluation and consideration before an agency adopts them. So again, more to come on that in the new year, but we wanted to make sure you all knew that those were out there and have been published for public comment. Any questions on that before we go on? All right.
Next slide, please.
All right.
Yeah.
And then one more one more topic is our proposed standardized notice form. So in Senate Bill 1964, the final section of that requires agencies and local governments to utilize a standardized notice form to give notice to the public when they are using public-facing AI, so a chatbot, for example, or some other sort of public-facing AI, or when they are using AI to make that is a controlling factor in a consequential decision. So, that is really a definition that falls under the heightened scrutiny realm of AI. So either public facing or, a consequential decision-making AI. The statute asked DIR to propose a standardized notice form that agencies must use. So we have kind of put together a form that we want to propose for agencies' use, and it really follows the statute fairly closely in terms of what it requires. The law requires the notice to include general information about the system and the data sources that the system uses, and then to discuss measures taken to comply with the privacy laws and ethics standards. And so consistent with those requirements, we've put together a basic form that agencies would use. And it starts out with this general system information, talking about the baseline model, the developer, and then just a general description of what the application is and what it does. And obviously, there is some flexibility there for agencies and how they would describe that system. And then it goes through a number of questions about data sources and usage. So is the model trained with agency data? Is it just an off-the-shelf model that you are using, or have you supplemented that with agency data to train it specific to your use? Does it collect or process any personal identifying information? Are the data inputs used to train the system? And then does the AI system share those data inputs or outputs with the agency? And Sylvia, I see you have a question there.
I'm just curious. So this form is for new things you're developing, or if you already have things that do this, do you need to do this form as well for those?
That's a great question, Sylvia. So the statute says that agencies that are using public-facing AI would use a standardized form. So, I think DIR has a couple of chatbots that we use. So once this form is established and we have it set, then we would go back and fill this out and provide this as a notice on our website next to the form. It wouldn't just be for things going forward.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, any questions on this page before I move on to the next? Yes, Heather.
So you said this was going to be published on the public-facing website?
So this would be a standardized form for agencies that they would need to publish. And it would, the agency would need to determine where they placed this notice. But this would be under SB 1964. There's a standardized form that agencies would need to use to let the public know basically that they're interacting with AI. This would be it.
So this would not be a form necessarily that we send to DIR for y'all to approve and then y'all post. We would complete it and put it on our website.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Thanks.
Jacqueline, I saw your hand, and then Mandy. Ms. Crawford.
Yeah, I mean, so I will admit that cyber is not necessarily my have deep expertise in, but are there concerns with giving specifics about the developer and the model that's used and whether PII is in there? Because I could see where that could potentially be taken.
That's what I was.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. You phrased it much better, but that was my hesitancy about, do we really want to say both who developed it and the tool that we're using to the world?
That's a great question. And I'd love, I think as a general matter, this is being required in other states and their sort of notification systems, but it raises a valid question that's worth more conversation for sure.
It does give the hackers a best place to start, where PII is. That's, great point, Jacqueline. I think we need to look at that.
Mandy, do you?
So I think, part of it and the idea behind this was essentially, if you think of it, because it is public facing, that it's part of that transparency piece, and essentially sort of to be looked at like a nutrition label that is easy to understand, that people can understand it. And I think that we do need to address and figure out a way to deal with the concerns that are legitimate concerns that y'all just brought up around that. But I think there's also, this is where we do that balance, right, on the PII, because I think there's also a key here where, Texans are going to want to know. And I think that this is a key thing. As far as what information is being collected by the government on these things. And I don't think that's always something that we've been particularly transparent about. And I think that that's what we heard from the AI Advisory Council and that we're seeing from the legislation, is that there's this sense behind it of a sense of transparency and trying to build the trust. So I love that this group is talking about it, because I think it's a balance that we're going to have to come up with on how do we balance that transparency while still protecting the data that's there, not giving a roadmap to attackers, but also just being clear with what it is we're collecting, how long are we keeping it, why are we keeping it, all of those sorts of things.
So are there more questions than this? Because
there are.
Okay.
Why don't we, if you have questions about this page, keep your hand raised and we'll answer those, and then we'll go on to the next page, I guess. Josh, I see your hand.
Yeah, maybe it's on the next page, but curious if you want to consider having where the model's hosted. So you have Gemini Pro, which obviously Google, but there might be like self-hosted models. Do we need to have transparency there? Is this called from a cloud provider or hosted in a data center? Might be something to consider as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That's not on the next page. So we'll make a note of that. On.
Yeah, and kind of being consistent, but more, I can see the value of providing some parts of this questionnaire being available online to the public, just from a transparency perspective. But I think this is going to get really unwieldy, because AI is now being incorporated into a lot of tools that we're using, even existing tools that we're using, and we're going to do more and more tools that actually interface with the public. And so even though I understand the need for the transparency, I do think we need to think about how much information can we provide that provides that transparency without going overboard, because I do have some concerns on the data sources and usage as well that was articulated earlier. So I think that there is a happy medium where we can provide that transparency, but I do think right now, based on what I'm seeing, and also, as agencies mature in the space, there's going to be a number of systems that we're going to have linkage to this source. So it's going to get to a point where I think it may be, I don't know how effective it's going to be based on the number of systems that you have.
Tina.
I would say my comments are similar to the group. And I would maybe have the team consider what we would call probably functional transparency and not necessarily model transparency. And so, what would we consider to be like a minimal acceptable transparency at that point? One is AI is in use. What's the purpose of the AI? Any human oversight mechanisms, things like that. I got to think about like the complete model transparency too. And then the second question I had is where you have is AI systems trained using your data inputs after initial implementation? Yes, no. If in that question, you're sort of just asking, are you using like reinforcement learning, human feedback models? You may just want to just say that too, even though that's like the overly maybe too technical for some people, but kind of use both language. So it's like crystal clear what that question is asking.
Okay. All right, Sylvia.
So I was just thinking, you have that section of personal identifying information, the PII piece. Wouldn't we already have something related to that in the notice of privacy for some of these applications? So I'm thinking tiers of the YTB, your Texas benefits. We have notice of privacy in there. We would have to figure out a way to connect these things, I'm assuming, at some point.
So, I mean, that'll really be agency specific in terms of how specific do their privacy notices get, and do they identify, specific data to a specific tool, or are they more general, so this would be, answering that question with regard to a specific tool. And I will say, the idea here was to provide yes, no questions for most of these to make it not super burdensome on agencies to complete this form, but to provide some transparency, and then if desired to be able to explain in more detail, but also to give some flexibility, recognizing that there may be instances where you don't want to get into the specifics of it, but if you are using a tool that uses personal information of Texans, then chances are that by law they have a right to know that, and so just being consistent there with that. But I do think we will certainly take these comments into consideration, and then there's a second page. So if there are any more questions on this, if not, Gloria, if you'll go on to the next slide, and this really focuses more on the privacy and ethics measures that the legislature asked to be included in this form. So, has testing occurred prior to deployment? Is there human oversight? Are the inputs deleted in the tool, or are they retained indefinitely? Is there a method for user feedback, and what are do you have security measures in place? So these are sort of the privacy and ethics measure questions that we came up with for this notice. Again, yes, no questions, but an opportunity to explain those in detail as well. Josh.
Sorry, yeah, there's one on the testing. I think having it yes, no. I mean, it's easy to answer, but what is the quality of testing? Right. I'd be concerned there. And maybe like what guardrails are implemented on the AI. If there's either a free form or a link or some kind of like AI specific guardrails that were added to it, whether that's yes, no, or some other answer might be a good consideration as well.
Good. All right. Thank you, Heather.
On the data deletion, it only talks about the inputs. Do we need to address whether the outputs are automatically deleted or at any frequency?
We can certainly add that and kind of discuss that. I think the idea was that the inputs, because they were coming from, particularly if it's public facing AI, they would be the inputs from an individual. Those would be more concerning than the outputs, but certainly the outputs, deletion of that, is something to consider as well.
Yeah, because we may just take one piece of that output and move it on down the workflow, and the rest of it, does that stay for a period of time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question.
Thanks.
All right. Any other thoughts? And certainly you can noodle on these and feel free to, reach out to us. You don't have to share these, thoughts today. But I really appreciate this. This is helpful, and we'll certainly take these comments back and mull over them ourselves. So appreciate this feedback. And I think that's now all for me, Tony. So you can move
We
on.
get one more after this, so don't go too far. But I'll
Okay.
at least get a break.
All right.
Thank you. We'll try to speed it up a little bit here. It's been great discussion. We've needed this, and we've been waiting for this. So thank you all for that. Couple of quick updates from me on the sandbox and the AI division. Senate Bill 1964 requires the establishment of sandbox program that we're beginning work on. Getting ready to kick off a design project for that sandbox environment, where we'll talk through or plan out the architecture and capabilities of that environment. We'll cover the monitoring and testing tools, to include recommendations made for monitoring and testing of systems in use for bias, performance, security, and those things, really for adherence to those things that Jenny talked about in the AI code of ethics, right? The monitoring and testing tools for that, and also development of a governance framework for that environment, so best practices for governance and including processes for evaluating sandbox participation requests and how that's going to be handled and oversight of that environment or those environments. So that project is getting ready to kick off. Also, we've got House Bill 2818 that requires the establishment of an AI division here at DIR that I'll be heading. And I'm happy to say that we're close. Hiring is underway, and I'm happy to say that we're really close to finalizing the hiring process for the first person in addition to myself for that division. That I hope we'll have that person named by the end of the week, and I'm targeting a January 5th. It's a Monday right after the holiday start date. And we'll be hiring some systems analysts for that division really soon. So those of you in agencies out there, please be thinking about, please reach out to us with any use case ideas. That division, the idea there is that division will be working with agencies to help with identification and implementation of use cases, in your agencies. And maybe more focused, it may be more smaller and medium-sized agencies than some of you that are on this, on this board and in this call right now. But please be thinking about that and spreading the word for that, about that, whether it's something that your agency can take advantage of or others that you work with. Next slide, please. Jenny, I think you're going to start this one. You and Hoffman.
Okay. I basically covered most of what I was going to talk about in the discussion on HB 3512. But we did just want to emphasize DIR is going to provide a training that is available for agencies and local governments to comply with that requirement. And it will not be a cost to them if they choose to use that. And it will be similar in format to the cyber and similar in length to the time of the cyber requirement. So that's just one opportunity among many that will be available for agencies. But John has the bigger discussion here, so I'll pass it off to him.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm John Hoffman. I'm DIR CTO. So a lot of discussion today on the training course and the required training that each individual's going to be doing. Another thing that we're looking and diving into is an overall AI literacy course, much like what we have for data literacy. Now, that is where individuals who are really wanting to understand the different components around AI, the definitions of AI, the use of AI, all those different broader, more government-centric kind of components around AI. And so we're putting several different syllabuses together, going to be working so that not only is it just in text, but have some videos and ease of adoption. And so just giving you all a perspective there. That is also underway. We want to get the training courses and the mandatory out and published, but then this will be supplemental to that for those who really want to dive in. we'll cover more around what those different components are and all of that as those are built, and certainly look for your all's feedback and direction. And those while the initial training here will be set for the year for the required, I do see the AI literacy as really a great tool that can evolve as the technology continues to change and as we bring in other perspectives, and so we'll continue to build that. Larry, next slide. I've got some other things just to cover pretty quickly here. I know we're getting close on time, but as Jenny and Tony have laid out items that are really immediate, this is a longer term kind of a oversight of what's going on in our Texas Innovation and Education Center. This is a group of different formats the DIR's put together, not only on AI, but also in other areas, cloud, blockchain. We may get into quantum here pretty soon. And so with that, I just wanted you all to have awareness, because as you all look at your charges, these may be different resources and different opportunities that you can share ideas or make requests and leverage. So next slide. A couple of things that have been going on. The AI user group, this is 900 strong now and growing. We've got great participation with calls just about every 6 to 8 weeks, kind of working through different calendars and holidays and things. But with that, usually 200 to 300 participants. It brings a whole host of subjects forward, and success and challenges. We've also leveraged this group to do collaboration with different agencies. Sylvia, we had a great event there with Health and Human and an AI-focused healthcare conference. We had AI Day 4, which really pushed on Texas agencies and entities, higher education, hospitals. And as these have grown, it used to be AI Day 1 was all about just kind of getting this awareness on what AI is. Now it's so exciting as we are planning on AI Day 5. It's really storylines of success different agencies are bringing forward. For those who have already presented or are looking to present, thank you so much for your participation. We have AI Day 5 on January 15th. I say it's as hot a ticket as a Taylor Swift concert. We hit 200 in about 2 hours and blocked we put a waiting list now, but I did hold back for the advisory members. If you all would like to participate on the 15th and haven't signed up, we do have available seats that I held back for that. And please let me know. It's all day there at the Barbara Jordan building. So next.
Josh stand up.
Oh yeah, I was waving.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. It was before you offered to send an invite. I was curious how to get involved with this. So
you bet.
Thank you.
You bet. Happy to send that to you. Okay. Next. So another thing that we do is the Innovation Lab, where we bring in and really try and marry the technology and the marketplace with the agencies and higher ed entities and structure and a environment that gives a hand-on approach. People can really take away the different nuances of the technology, better understanding, hopefully enable, moving to next steps and how to write scopes of work or do evaluations or responses. We've got a lot of different agencies participating, a lot of different technologies. And this is just another great resource that the advisory could use in understanding the technology, pushing different messages, trying to drive those use cases that Tony mentioned. And the way we see this between Tony and I is I'm looking in the greater market and all the different agencies, public sector entities, as these things start taking hold and there's a demand and a need and a maturity growing, then that easily pushes into a Tony's operational providing of these different services and projects to help and do the implementation. So together, Tony and I are working hand in hand. Next slide. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is it's a bit of a continuation. You may remember we all had to do an AI inventory for agencies. And the legislation now has in HB 149 and in SB 1964 around an inventory. And so is the IRDR, those are not familiar with it, is the Information Resources Deployment Review. It's going out. In fact, I think instructions have been posted and we're getting ready to go through that process. But as agencies complete that form, One of the components is an inventory, an IT inventory of the different applications. New this year is going to be, does that application include AI components? And a yes, no box, and this goes through the Spectrum tool. And if yes, it does get into a couple questions around, is it heightened scrutiny? What is the purpose? There's like 16 different categories: case management, chatbot, customer relationship management, all the ones you can imagine, trying to make it so it's not just a text response, it's some type of categorization. And then finally, what are risk mitigations in place? Has it been tested? All the different components. There are 12 different ones we've defined. So trying to make that a thorough review and inventory of what's going on in each of the agencies for the legislative leadership to understand where AI is being used, and at the same time not so burdensome that it and just difficult to try and amass an outcome. So structuring that way. I believe that concludes my comments.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. So one thing before we get off of here, that was our last of our slides, is talk about scheduling. We thought a quarterly cadence might, be a good idea, at least to get started. Are there any days of the week or times, or certain times of day or days of the week that don't work for y'all to help us get started on scheduling of some kind of a regular meeting for this board? Any of you board members? Heather, go ahead.
So Monday mornings and Tuesday mornings are tough because we have our executive meetings and our commission board meetings. Those, so just throwing that out.
That makes sense. That's for me too. Go ahead.
Yeah, usually Thursday mornings are not good. I mean, today, Monday afternoon, it worked out. You got everybody on this call. So if Monday, I would also just ask if we do Monday at maybe 1:30, just because some of us have business meetings and stuff like that during lunch. So that would be my only ask.
Thanks, Josh.
I was just going to offer if there's any desire to meet more frequently than quarterly, I'm open to that as well. If there's whatever cadence you guys need.
Okay. And for you all members, if there are things that you want to meet about or invite witnesses or folks to present in the meetings, please let us know. Reach out to us. Reach out to Tessa, and let us know so we can make sure that happens. Any other thoughts on meeting and scheduling?
You mentioned people that want to present. Probably have an amateur question for you. We are going to be solicited, if not already, probably like crazy on LinkedIn, on people wanting to command the attention to this board. How might you suggest we handle or manage that? Because right now I'm just ignoring it.
Yeah, that's a good question. Any thoughts from any of our legal folks on the call here? Jenny or Josh, any recommendations? Ultimately, I think that you all as board members, if you decide that you want to hear someone present here, then whatever manner they get to you, and and solicit your support is between you and them. But other than beyond that, anybody have any thoughts on that?
Sorry.
Thanks.
I would say that's the right idea. You all are all here as independent members of this board, so people can reach out to you as they would like. You are free to respond as your judgment and capacity direct you. You are free to ignore them if you want. If you do see something that is that you think does look good, you can raise it up through us. You can reach out to us or through Tony, and it's something that the board can certainly consider bringing in, but you don't have to, just by dint of your membership on this board, respond to everyone or open yourself up to every solicitation or inquiry that comes from the public your way.
And I would think that some of that we'd have to balance, because it could be some folks that are doing that may have, for example, an open procurement with us at DIR. I mean, we're always doing procurements, maybe with other people on the board that are there. And so that's a thing to balance that we'd really have to look at. So, there are other avenues that, Tina, one suggestion might be send them to John Hoffman, because he's always looking for folks for partnerships with the Innovation Lab, opportunities to submit for presentations for AI days, things like that. I'm not a sitting board member, but I'll throw it out to y'all that I would love to hear, if we're going to do presentations, it would be things that agencies are doing and more things like that to kind of help guide some of that stuff, rather than necessarily just things from folks who may be extremely well qualified and have fantastic solutions. It just doesn't seem like that's probably the right venue for it through this board.
I second that, Mandy.
Yeah.
On agency presentations. Okay. Well, we're just over time. So unless there are any other questions or comments, we'll be in touch with scheduling for our next meeting. Thank you all again for your time this afternoon, and we look forward to working with y'all in this initiative going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.